Welcome back to Martins and More. My name's Maury Rutch.
And I'm Spoon Phillips.
And this episode's brought to you by our Patreon members. Join our growing community for early access to every episode, exclusive video versions of the podcast, behind-the-scenes footage, full-length product demos, and more. We appreciate you. Spoon, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, I was just having a seance here with some spirits out there who are trying to communicate to me regarding October songs, spooky songs, macabre songs that might have something to do with Halloween, but don't necessarily have to be about monsters and ghosts, but they certainly can be. And I'm looking very forward to hearing more about what our readers and listeners have been thinking about as to their favorite, spooky, scary, mysterious, macabre songs and music. And I have, some of my own, and I've gotten some really great replies. So maybe we should dive right in.
Maybe we should. And Homer would say it's pronounced macabre.
Macabre, which actually probably is in whatever language it's from. I wonder what that is. It sounds almost Hungarian, but it probably isn't. Macabre. Maybe it's Italian. But anyway, yes, I always like that word. I think October, November, when the leaves are swirling around and the cold winds blowing around at night and get all those dark, swirly clouds and all that. I mean, there's a pretty good reason Halloween took on its modern day aura, given the time of year. And I don't know where you folks are from, but where I live, you always think you're going to be able to wear that skimpy Halloween costume until Halloween comes around and you have to wear your overcoat.
Cue the picture of you and your skimpy outfit now.
Well, this is about as skimpy as it gets. I wore this outfit for years to hand out candy, and sometimes I end up having to wear my big overcoat. But I used to have this really wonderful half mask of an old man. Years ago, I volunteered in New York to go to this party. It was like a community singles dance party that was at a mansion up in the Vinegar Hill section of Harlem, and it's a beautiful house. And I volunteered to be on the staff, and ended up I got assigned being the butler. And they had a superhero theme, so they expected all of the help to wear bright yellow spandex. So I decided to go as Alfred the butler from Batman, so I wouldn't have to do that. And I got this great old man's mask that was like half, with a big mustache and big bushy eyebrows. And now I don't have to wear it anymore because I'm now an old man. But actually, it fell apart over the years, so I haven't been using that for a while now.
It fell apart over the years, kind of like our program.
And me.
Well, I think it's only fair that since you did all this research and you actually had more luck than I did this time in asking our Facebook friends, what do you think of as a good spooky song? I didn't necessarily collect a lot of replies from Facebook. I did talk to a few of our patrons and got some good replies from them. But what I did do, I did go above and beyond. I was at a really cool creator conference last week for Ecamm Network, through a really, really good seminar. They called it Creator Camp because it was more of a camp with counselors and cabins, and it was more fun than work. At least that's how a lot of us, took everything home. But the last day of that program, a lot of people went on to do some organized activities, and I took it upon myself to go back to one of my favorite places, Salem, Massachusetts, and I spent the afternoon roaming Essex Street to find some really good friends to get me in that mood. I didn't ask them what their spooky songs were because they don't really talk back to you, but you mind if I show you a couple of pictures to set the spooky mood?
Yeah, I certainly don't mind.
Who else is going to say they do? So here we have, you remember these guys from NASFest?
Well, the guy on the left does look kind of familiar. But then I've never actually seen our friend Barry with his shirt off, but I highly suspect.
Wow, I was going to say, please don't name any names, but it's hard not to. So that's the first pair of friends I ran into. And then we have, I was going to take my phone out to get a picture of the guy from Scream, and he said, call me, on the left there. Didn't get to stop and talk to him, but he has the phone from the movie, I'm sure. And then don't make the mistake calling this guy Frankenstein. It is Frankenstein's monster, as I'm sure
That's
Spoon
correct.
remembers.
Or the creature, but yes.
Or the creature. And then it gets a little bit scarier after that. I should give you a trigger warning. These next pictures might be a little bit scarier still.
The Invisible Man. And the Invisible Woman. Best $5 I ever spent.
I said, hey, please really, really, really strangle me. I've had a terrible work week. And he didn't take the joke. He's like, he really did it. So thank you, Michael. And then I visited
Jack Skellington. Yeah.
I said, happy Halloween early. He said, there's no such thing as early Halloween, and I will see you at Christmas. So I want to say hi to Jack. And probably the most nightmarish, I shared this on our Patreon a couple days ago, Patreon, and Roeth said, hey, great, thanks for the nightmares.
Oh, indeed. The scary clown. Wow.
Yep. So that's Pennywise. I think that's his name, and he was probably the most off-putting of my visitors that day, but I had a really nice afternoon in Salem, and I do recommend anybody who's anywhere near that part of New England, especially at this time of the year, two things I want to tell you. Don't miss the opportunity to visit it, and don't do it by car. Get an Uber, get a Lyft, take a train. Don't try to drive into the city, but go see our friends at Salem.
So, yes, I was only ever at Salem once, and I wish I could have been there longer, but I certainly had an interesting time going to some of the old historical houses and all of that. And it was in the autumn, but it wasn't quite Halloween. And I thought it was very cool when you come into the train from down south from New York City. You basically come in at the bay or harbor, and you have to then go up this very long, stairway up a bluff to get to the town. So it automatically, has almost a sense of foreboding about it when you're trying to get up there from the Amtrak. But so very cool. Halloween's as a favorite holiday of mine. It always has been. I tend to try to focus on the spooky, as it were. I really miss my upstairs neighbor, River, who used to be a roommate. She used to have a scare-a-thon every year where it was a 12-hour marathon of highly researched horror movies from around the world with little, then she would run little pre-recorded like YouTube playlists and stuff in between and have all sorts of interesting food, usually done in kind of a scary manner. But I mean, when you went down the hall, there'd be a full-size body in a spider, cocoon and a giant spider up on the ceiling. And, they went all out. Every room was, totally decorated. Had a fabulous time. Saw some really great movies. I don't tend to watch. I don't tend to watch scary movies much, but I attempt to around this time of year. And the same thing goes for the music for this time of year. So my playlist, which will eventually be on this broadcast in the notes, a link to it, is both traditional, pop songs and folk and country songs, as well as some. Even some classical music that I find very evocative of this time of year and spookiness in general.
Nice. Well, why don't we wrap it up? Well, wrap it up. Goodbye.
See ya.
Why don't we get things started by talking about some really good spooky music, but remind each other at the end of this program, we should at least, you and I, name one. Why don't we, for fun, we'll name one Halloween scary movie that traumatized the crap out of us, whether it was as kids or as recent as this year. What movie scared you? And the rest of the program will be all audio.
Okay, fair enough. Let's give it a go. So I'm going to begin, since you mentioned that I've been doing some thinking about this. The very first song on my playlist is actually from a New York City band. They have 12 albums, maybe. They've been around since the 1980s. They're called Life in a Blender, and they're good friends of mine that I've gigged with over the years. In fact, they're playing in the area. The main songwriter, lives in Seattle these days, but he still comes back to record and play with the band. They did a song a long time ago called Dead Get Down, and you can see it on YouTube. There's a video. It just shows the album cover, but it's called Dead Get Down. It's a very fun, funky, spooky sounding a sort of novelty song that is a lot about the dead, dancing the circles in the wheat field and doing their bony rampages and all that kind of stuff. But it's good fun, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. I'm sure they're going to pull it out of the crypt for their fall shows that they're doing in October. So that's Life in the Blender, Dead Get Down. And I'm curious to know, because when people think about this stuff, I'm sure there's people out there, and I know people who got back to me, first thing they thought of was Monster Mash, which, if you're of a certain age particularly, you heard that to death. My list is staying away from those kind of funky, funny novelty songs, except Dead Get Down kind of fits into that category. But so what's one from your list or your own reckoning when you think of songs about ghosts and goblins and monsters and spookiness?
Well, when I think of ghosts and goblins and monsters and spookiness related to audio, I think of something that Carlos mentioned. One of our patrons says, favorite again is a toss-up between Season of the Witch by Donovan and Witchy Woman by the Eagles. Hopefully listed already, Werewolves of London. So I'll start the show by saying Werewolves is my Monster Mash, where I think of Halloween, and I think of Zevon before I think of the Monster Mash. But one thing that Carlos said there, I've never given it a lot of thought. I'm coming at it from the angle when a song makes me think of Halloween, that's more derivative than saying there's a word witch in the title. Witchy Woman, of all the times I've ever listened to that song, I've never given it any thought to connecting it with a spooky time of year. Of course, anything that has witchy in it has to be. But Season of the Witch makes a lot of sense to me, and I remember seeing quite a few friends at NASFest, and we weren't trying at all to talk about Halloween, but that song came up a few times. So Season of the Witch is probably the most obvious in that pairing, taken away. If you're going to take away Monster Mash, like he said, hopefully it's just obvious, and you don't need two podcast hosts to tell you Werewolves of London is a Halloween song, but they're the first three I've got.
Well, that's pretty cool. I think Season of the Witch will certainly be played a lot in New York City. People who are gigging out who are going to choose to, sort of bring out some October, autumn, or Halloween themes. I think with Witchy Woman, if you listen to the lyrics, the raven hair, and sparks fly from her fingertips, that clearly it's more than just a metaphor. They do, saying this woman is quite witchy. There's an awful lot of songs out there that I think people will mention like that are more metaphorical. There's all kinds. When you look up songs about ghosts, almost all of them have nothing to do with ghosts. They're all metaphor, the ghost in my heart, or the ghost my girlfriend left after she left, or there's a ghost in this house, which is one of those kind of songs. They're all like very, cool songs to them, and they're very nice. If These Walls Could Speak. Even Long Black Veil is somebody speaking from the grave, and I think that kind of crosses over into that. But Witchy Women, I think, is on the borderline of that. There are other ones that have witch in the title, and again, is most of the time speaking metaphorically about somebody who's manipulative. There tend to be psychological songs. One song that is about a witch that people have mentioned, and that would have automatically been on my list too, is Rhiannon by Fleetwood Mac, which was actually inspired, famously about a Welsh witch. And I chose on my playlist to use the live version from back in the day, because at the very beginning you hear her talking, possibly in a dressing room, a little bit about what they know about Rhiannon. So that, really is about a witch taking to the skies and all that. And it's a very, it's a great version. It's really Fleetwood Mac at the height of their powers in that era, and the Rumors era, or directly thereafter. reminds me of a short story. I only went to a sleepaway camp once, and when my mom wanted to pawn us off on some of her friends, who took us off to it was like a Christian revival camp, which they didn't tell us until we got there. But we were in these very primitive cabins, and it had like a swimming pool that actually, like a swimming hole that had cement on the bottom, but just had mud, but with mud in it. And it wasn't near a river and stuff. And we had a lot, it was the classic camp songs and all that. Well, and I was quite young, but my brother's 5 years older. And I was allowed to go along on this night excursion if I didn't tell anybody. And we went up on the hill because there was a rumor there was a cemetery up there. And so we went up there with flashlights and, completely against the rules. There were no counselors involved or any of that stuff. And we went up there, and this is an absolutely true story. While we were up there, there was a tombstone that had a woman's name, and it said witch, and her death date, didn't have a birth date. And it said witch in big letters. It was carved into a tombstone that said witch. It said the woman's name and witch. And it scared the willies out of me, I can tell you. And was it a plant? Did they put it up there for, because they knew kids were going to do this? But in the midst of all these, what looked like very legitimate, it was an old graveyard that clearly hadn't been in use. It was not an active graveyard. It was like an old country graveyard from the 1800s. But it's it's a true story. We saw that. Whether it was really a true tombstone, I didn't consider until many years later. But very cool. That's Rhiannon. That's one of the more pop songs on my list. I'm going to jump over, since you said I have some more songs than you do. I'm going to go from witches to ghosts, and I think one of the great ghost songs through the years is Stan Jones' Ghost Riders in the Sky. There we are. There's a Ghost Rider in the Sky right there. The original version is from 1948, so that's the one I chose to do. It's very similar to Eddie Arnold's and Johnny Cash and a lot of the other people who out there who've done it. I think even Dinah Shore and those kind of singers did a version of it one time or another. But this is the original version that'll be on my playlist by Stan Jones. And I remember as a kid, I had it on some compilation record of probably cowboy songs, but I always remembered when I was like 4 or 5 years old, I found it quite thrilling and more than a little scary.
That's funny.
So you did 3, and so I am going to do another one. This is, I'm going to skip one right now and go straight to a second ghost song that's always been a favorite, and that is Gordon Lightfoot's The Ghosts of Cape Horn, about the sailors lost at sea at Cape Horn at the bottom of Africa. It's a classic, one of the classic Gordon Lightfoot songs, so check it out if you're not familiar with it. Good guitar picking, and it's right up there with If You Could Read My Mind, which of course has a whole verse about the ghost in the wishing well, which was another favorite song growing up. So that's Gordon Lightfoot's Ghosts of Cape Horn. So I'm curious with our listeners who've had their own lists of this sort of stuff, if how many of our songs are on their lists and how many of theirs aren't on our lists.
Another entry from a patron of ours, our friend Rosalind, says, Ghost of a Texas Ladies Man by Concrete Blonde. I hear the name Concrete Blonde, and I think of some early 80s music, and I won't say that I remember which song I'm thinking of, because I don't remember it, but I can't say that I know what that song is. I'm not sure I've ever heard it.
Yeah, no, I don't know that song either. So thank you very much, my dear, for that. I'll definitely check that out. That's interesting. So if we're on the ghost themes, do I have any other ghosts that I want to put in here? I tried to mix it up between various themes. So I know I had some other ghost songs, but Ghost Riders in the Sky, Long Black Veil, and Ghost of Cape Horn are the only ones that I was including on my own list. So now, one of the things about Halloween, traditionally, it comes from a Celtic holiday that was in some way vilified by when the Europeans came over, and then paganism went out, Christianity came in, and it turned into something associated with, witches and black magic and all that stuff. This is not on my list, but because I haven't found the video of it yet, but somebody pointed out the theme to The Exorcist called Tubular Bells, that they can't hear that without which is a very cool piece of music, but you just, I can't hear it without the cackles in the back of my neck going up. But my devil song, I have a couple devil songs, but one of them is a talk song, one of the classic talk songs by a very young Chris Christopherson, though it stayed in his repertoire forever, called Beat the Devil. And he also has a song, Silver Tongue Devil, but that's really, again, metaphorical about, a slick-talking ladies' man, where this is actually about the devil and about somebody, meeting, it's kind of a spoiler, but, meeting the devil in a tavern. And it's one of the great, sort of talk songs that's pretty cool, and about a down-and-out musician who meets a stranger who might be able to help his career. But if he was a brave heart to mixed media. But anyway, yeah. So check it out when my playlist is up if you're not familiar with Beat the Devil. Totally cool Chris Christopherson composition. Of course, he just joined the Choir Invisible recently. And so I definitely wanted to put that on there in memory of Chris Christopherson.
Amen. We got another patron I've got to recognize here. Roeth, well, technically I don't actually. Roeth says, I provided my answer to Spoon on Facebook. Hopefully I'm covered. So he was clever enough to say, I've already answered this. Don't make me say it again. I can't tell you what song that is because I didn't see what he told you. Roeth, you're pretty crafty.
There are some really cool tunes on here, so I hope to get to a lot of them. Dead Man's Party by Oingo Boingo. Have to admit, don't know it. Thank you, Ruth.
Wow.
That's one. Thriller by Michael Jackson got a lot of votes. And
never heard of it.
If guys don't remember, never heard of it? If you don't remember, it was the first MTV video that, was treated like a movie and directed by John Landis. And basically it's the I was a teenage werewolf scenario. But with the famous, dance of the zombies and the werewolves and all that. But Thriller was a big one for a lot of people. And then I was honored by him mentioning my instrumental composition, The White Lady of Tutbury, which is a ghost story. And yes. I'm going to, I actually don't have a video of it currently on YouTube, so I will basically throw one together with some images of Tutbury, the ruins of Tutbury Castle, and put that on there so I can add it to the playlist. So thank you, Roth. You can actually see him performing that composition on YouTube as well. And he did it. He really surprised me by doing it at Martin Fest, one of the song circles this year. So, but yes, it is a ghost story based on the fact that ruined castle was said to have been haunted by a white lady. And some people think it's Mary Queen of Scots because it was one of her prisons, but I think it's somebody else, but you'll have to look that information up another time online. So, so that was another good ghost story. That's a werewolf. Thriller is basically a werewolf. So we have werewolves in London, and we have that. Speaking of werewolves, multiple people said Bad Moon Rising by Creedence Clearwater.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, and which was used in the movie American Werewolf in London, as well as several versions of Blue Moon. And I have a Creedence Clearwater performance on my playlist, though it's Screamin' Jay Hawkins is actually who did the original of I Put a Spell on You, which B.B. King and all kinds of people have done. And I'd be curious to hear people, if they want to put in the notes what their favorite version of I Put a Spell on You is. I chose Creedence Clearwater Revival from their set at Woodstock because of his spectacular guitar solo. It had been in the vault forever because he refused to sign any releases to allow the movie to be on the film or on the Atco album. And so a lot of people don't even know that Creedence was there, but their entire set's available on Woodstock, from Woodstock is On. And they were clearly one of the best acts on there, up there with 10 Years After and Santana and Jimi Hendrix. But anyway, this is a particularly fine and fabulous version of I Put a Spell on You, so that's on my playlist.
Can I scare you with a trivia question?
Certainly.
Answer at the end of the show. What 80s spooky creature feature movie featured Creedence's version of Midnight Special? I want to say it's almost at the end of the movie. It's like you hear that song start, and then it's either credits or at least it might be one of those movies that has little sections. But there was an 80s movie with that song in it. What was the movie? That answer coming up.
Ooh, yes. I'll have to put on my thinking mortician's hat and see what I can come up with. So yes, I've got. What about songs about the devil? There's a zillion songs about the devil. Some of them are, again, metaphorical. She's got the devil in her heart, blue devil in a blue dress, that kind of stuff. That's not the kind of stuff I'm looking for in here. So I'm going to just go ahead. I know lots of other people mentioned this. I am going to go with the Rolling Stones' Sympathy for the Devil. But I'm going to go, the video that I'm sharing in my playlist on YouTube is their very first public performance of this, where they had a bunch of other people come out and play with them. This was days after Brian Jones had passed away, and so it's Mick Taylor's first public performance with the Rolling Stones. Keith is playing a Gibson Flying V, blonde Flying V, and really blown it out. So simply, and it's like a 11-minute song. It's like a long jam in addition to being the song. So that's Sympathy for the Devil, Rolling Stones. Got any devil songs for us?
You're going to say Devil Went Down to Georgia doesn't count, so I won't put that one in there.
It certainly does, because it's about the real devil. So, and it got mentioned a lot. I got a lot of people reaching out to me about that.
Yeah, I don't know if I have another one off the top of my head. I will. I try to do more collecting ideas than thinking of them on my own. And I was really busy last week, so when I went to Salem, I told myself after I leave Salem, I'm going to spend the whole train ride, doing that. But the train ride was only 40 minutes back to the hotel, and I came up with I didn't really think of the devil. I'm trying to think of ghost and witch. They were the two things on front of my mind. Now that you say devil, give me a minute, and I will make it my life's mission or this hour's mission to think of one.
Well, you mentioned ghosts and witches. I'll mention one that pops up all over the place. That's kind of both, and kind of devil and witch, and that is Black Magic Woman. But I am, and again, metaphorical. You got your spell on me, baby. But at the same time, it's very evocative of that kind of stuff. And I actually am sharing the original version of this by Peter Green of Fleetwood Mac fame, was the original founder of Fleetwood Mac. He actually was the first person to do Black Magic Woman, and Santana's version is very, very similar to Peter Green's version. And Larry Coryell actually did one too around that same time, but that's a little more jazzy and Latin-y. But so this is the original, and there's also a nice video of him playing it on live back in the day, but it's kind of a black and white TV thing, and the sound's not that good, so I went ahead with just the studio version of Black Magic Woman. Ooh, that reminds me of that movie that you said we need to talk about later, those scary bats.
Titanic.
When people say, I can't believe you never saw Titanic, I always say, I know how it ended. The Atlanta Rhythm section, Spooky, my friend Ron in New York City. Did Lee get a hold of you? Did you hear from Lee or Rosanna? Or Roseanne?
No, honestly, I didn't. I don't think so.
Well, his was Roland the Headless Thompson Gunner. Thought that was brilliant. Speaking of ghosts, yeah, absolutely. Roland the Headless Thompson Gunner. That's, I think, still my favorite Leon Russell. Levon Helm. What am I doing? I feel like my Warren Zevon, as he would say over there. But yes,
wow.
Yeah. because that album was huge. My brother brought that album home, and I listened to it to death. So, which has Werewolves of London on it as well. But Rowan the Headless Thompson got a super cool song. Another favorite of Lee is a theme song to the English series called Rent-A-Ghost. Rent-A-Ghost was a sitcom a long time ago. It ran a really long time. Like the main guy left. It was one of those kind of shows. And basically it's about a haunted house that rents out ghosts to other haunted house and stuff like that. I've never actually seen it, but I'd heard about it. I'm sure there's probably old episodes on YouTube about it. But Rent-A-Ghost, and it's actually kind of a catchy tune. The theme to Rent-A-Ghost is on there. So that's interesting that he would bring that up. Lady Eleanor by Lindsay Fair is on my spooky set list. That's Adrian, our friend Adrian, upstate New York, speaking of Englishmen.
Nice.
And let's see here. Oh, yeah. Friend Marlon, who's an excellent musician in New York City. Marlon Cherry, check him out. He plays with all kinds of people as a sideman, bass player, percussionist, does his own stuff, has his own albums. The theme to Dark Shadows. And he says the theme to The Exorcist and, of course, Monster Mash. But yeah, Dark Shadows, I don't know if anybody remembers Dark Shadows other than me. When I was a little kid, I was just hearing the theme would scare me. It was actually a daytime sitcom, soap opera, daytime soap opera with that just happened to have characters that were vampires and werewolves. Somebody said it's not creepy or scary, but for some reason, George Harrison's song "Long, Long, Long" off the White Album has always put him in that kind of mood, and it's very evocative. I remember that I remember, sitting as a kid and feeling very verklempt by it. A song of longing, and then Shane MacGowan and Sinead O'Connor, "Haunted." My friend Cindy, college friend, that's going on my set list. I'd forgotten all about that song. Great song. And Bad Moon Rising, Season of the Witch. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Rick. Ooh, yep, my friend Trey K got an NPR show called Us and Them. You guys should check it out. He had this song called, speaking of Shane MacGowan, the Pogues, the Turkish Song of the Damned. So that sounds cool. I'll have to check that out. I don't actually remember that song. So I will check that out. And he has Diamanda Gallas, or Gallus. Her, I Put a Spell on You. So there's another person's I Put a Spell on You that he likes a lot. Cindy is saying, Putting Out Fire with Gasoline, David. Oh, that's interesting. David Bowie. And the Mighty Bostonians, The Devil's Night Out. David Eno, Brian Eno, Driving Me Backwards. The Dead Kennedys have a song named Halloween, though I'm sure I wouldn't be able to understand the lyrics if they were singing it. The Ramones' Pet Cemetery. And Bluegrass, Rod Menner, hot mandolin player, plays with me often in the Highland Shatners and with many other people around New York City. Also a guitar player. Bringing Mary Home, a classic bluegrass ghost song with lots of versions on YouTube. Bringing Mary Home, I'll have to check that out. Tom Waits, The Earth Died Screaming, another one from Trey K. That sounds scary.
That sounds pretty.
And then I'm surprised only one person came up with Scary Monsters, Super Creeps, David Bowie. That's on my list.
Oh, wow.
But it's not yet on my set list. And another vote for Thriller from Elizabeth, my old roommate, Elizabeth. So very cool. So do you have more or should I continue?
I have one more that comes from another patron. Our friend Jasper says, Chasing Down a Ghost, official video by Brian Dunn, underrated artist, perhaps a new subject for your channel, underrated unknown artists. So tap the brakes. We're only one thing at a time, but I do like that idea.
I like that idea a lot. Thank you very much. So, Chasing an Unknown Ghost, Brian Dunn. We'll have to check it out.
Yeah, Chasing Down a Ghost by Brian Dunn. Yep.
By an unknown artist. Yeah, so we're each going to have our own set list. So Mario put together a set list of some of these suggestions, and I will add some of them to mine as well for anybody who's interested. My music is rounding out with two favorite pieces of classical music that are quite scary. And there's a variety of them that are like that. But one of them is Night on Bald Mountain. And I actually have the video of the Walt Disney version of this, which ended Fantasia, which came out, it was made in 1940. I don't remember if it was released in 1940 or not. But they basically show the witches and ultimately the devil, coming up out of the mountain in the middle of the night and all that stuff, and until the tolling of the dawn bell, where they all recede back into the night and all that. Super cool. I try to see Fantasia, every few years whenever I can, now that it's available on video, so I own it. But Night on Bald Mountain, and then the other one is Berlioz's. It's from the Symphonie Fantastique, but it is Fantastique. It's the Dreams of the Witch's Sabbath, which is quite dramatic and has bells that are much more macabre bells in it, tolling of bells. And so that's the Dreams of the Witch's Sabbath. And then I end my set list with the album version from Umaguma of Careful with That Axe, Eugene.
Hey,
by Pink Floyd.
Pink Floyd. Nice.
I avoided all the Psycho Killer stuff. I'm not a big fan of the just some guy chopping up, people stuff. But Careful with That Axe, Eugene. Roger Waters emits this scream that's his closest thing to a banshee, which is that famous Irish ghost whose scream supposedly would stop people's hearts and kill them out on the moors. Wow. They scream, and Careful with That Axe, Eugene. Whether you listen to the studio version that I have or the live versions, how he was able to do that without losing his voice wasn't possible, because he eventually did lose his voice. And I bet you Careful with That Axe, Eugene screaming had something to do with it.
Careful with that Axe, Eugene screaming, Roger.
That's right. But it's like a 9-minute, those last four, Sympathy for the Devils, 10:43, Night on Bald Mountain's 8 minutes. Berlioz's Dream of the Witch's Sabbath is almost 10 minutes. Careful with That Axe is almost 9 minutes. So if you feel like, taking a nice bath with candles and a few pentagrams around, that'd be a good soundtrack for you. So happy Halloween.
And after you get out of the bath, I do have one last-minute addition. A friend of mine on Facebook posted his playlist, and I said, what else is on that playlist? I want to, mention you on our program. And my buddy Franklin said, Welcome to My Nightmare, Alice Cooper. People Are Strange by The Doors. And when you said Psycho Killer, it made me think of this text. Psycho Killer, Don't Fear the Reaper, and Strange Brew. Thank you, Franklin.
Oh, Strange Brew would have been a perfect one for witches. Of course. Good calls. Good calls, all of them. So, yes. So what was the movie that gave you the frights?
Well, you almost did it to me on this episode, because hearing somebody talk about the theme from The Exorcist, Tubular Bells, I can't even look at Facebook or Instagram this time of year. If I see anything that looks like it's part of the poster or anything of a movie clip, I go back in time like 5 seconds, because I don't want to even see it. And I remember talking to a friend of mine a couple years ago. You pass around those pictures back when, I don't want to say Facebook was new, but you'd stare at this picture. What's wrong with this image? And after 3 seconds, something jumps at you. I actually, when people use that movie in that gag, I jump out of my skin. So that's the movie that really wrecked me. I don't know if I've ever seen it all the way through.
I'll remember that.
Yeah, you will.
No, I don't try to scare people. I know what that's like. Yeah, but I have to say, it's one of the great American films. If you, all genre aside, just like Young Frankenstein, which also has a Halloween-y film, is, it's a goofy screwball comedy, but it's one of the great American films. And The Exorcist is so well made. And Lee Cobb as the detective, he should have gotten an Academy Award for that. He was so excellent. And like when he comes in and asks for the movie stars, after he's interviewing, and has to ask for her autograph, and then has to confess it's actually not for his daughter, it's for him, because he can't even remember his daughter's name when she's asking what your daughter's name is. But anyway, He's so good. Everybody in it's marvelously cast and really holds up. On all levels. It's one of the great American films. Well, I'm going to go farther back. When I had to have been 4, and in the house that I lived in when I was 4, there was like a chair with sofa and stuff in our little living room, and from that chair you would get out and you would turn around. And an adult would walk 4 paces to the bathroom door. But I was so terrified watching this movie that I couldn't leave my seat. And I'm surprised I didn't come up with kidney failure because I was just too terrified to get up and even go to the bathroom. And it was Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. With
Come on.
That's absolutely true. As a 4-year-old, Bela Lugosi played Dracula. I mean, Lon Chaney Jr. played the Wolfman. I don't think Karloff played the monster. I think somebody else played Frankenstein's monster. But it just scared the willies out of me. At the same time, after that movie, I became obsessed with monsters, and my dad bought me most of those Universal models of Dracula and the Wolfman and Frankenstein and the.
Sure.
I had the Mummy. I had the Hunchback of Notre Dame. I never had the Invisible Man. There were a couple other ones I didn't have, but I think I had the Phantom of the Opera. But anyway, yes. But in modern era, I would say The Sixth Sense gave me the willies for a long time. I thought that was so brilliantly done. No special effects at all done through lighting and sound effects. And except for the one thing where they showed like people hanging from ghosts hanging from a gallows or whatever it is. Yeah, there's those kind of movies, but that one really got me. The Haunting, the original Haunting, not the remake where all the goofy special effects. The original, The Haunting with Julie Harris, Claire Bloom, that's one that scared the willies out of me. I was probably in junior high school when I saw that, and I couldn't remember the name of it, and I sought it for years when people were doing Halloween fests, and eventually did find it, I think, when I was in college. But that's a biggie. I like ghost movies. I like really good ghost movies more than the, jump scare kind of movies or the big violent stuff. But
gore.
But I have to say, favorite zombie movie is Trip to Busan. I think it's what it's called, and it's South Korean. I saw that because of the Scare-a-thon upstairs. It's in Korean, but boy, is it awesome. I've never been a fan of the Night of the Living Dead kind of zombie movies, but this is just terrific and horrific because the zombies are really fast. And it's about a train that's getting overrun by these undead on this long train ride, and it's really perfect between creepiness and jump scare and action movie tension and all that stuff. Journey to Busan or Last Train to Busan, I think is what it's called. But anyway, for people who like those kind of things, I would highly recommend that. You can always add anybody's favorite like Halloween movies scary movies in the list. I'd be happy to check them out. Maybe. Mario only limits himself to the Treehouse of Horror, the annual Simpsons Halloween special, which are usually pretty great. But
I do want to go find that clip and share it somewhere on our Patreon with Homer, and he's running through the woods and he's scared to death, and he sees this big gigantic sign that says "die," and he screams, and then there's still like leaves in the way, and it moves out, and it really says "diet," and he screams for that.
Screams louder.
So yes, I'm a sucker for the Treehouse of Horror, and Homer's had my heart all these years, and I'll try to find some way to put that in before this episode goes to broadcast. And this episode really, not to scare you, but it really almost is over, except for the fact that I do have to reveal my trivia question answer. So before I get that far, we do want to thank everybody for all of your support, all our patrons for helping us out along the way. This program would not be possible without you. And if you are watching this on YouTube, let us know, did we miss a really obvious spooky, scary song, or did we actually list the one you were going to list anyway? We'd love to see that in the comment section. Spoon, which 80s cheeseball horror movie featured CCR's version of Midnight Special at the end? I'm trying to, when you first said it, I had something in my mind of maybe
I had a couple of them, but I realized Phantasm is not 80s, it's 70s, I think. So it's not Phantasm. So 80s cheeseball horror movie that would have had...
Dan Aykroyd is in the scene.
Well, you're not talking Ghostbusters, are you?
Nope. Dan Aykroyd's in the scene, and the famous actor John Lithgow is in the... This is like a movie of 3 or 4 acts. The act stars John Lithgow.
Oh, is it like Creepshow?
It's like that. It's that kind of movie where it's a movie of more than one thing, but it's not Creepshow.
I don't remember. I'm afraid it's lost me, but I may have not seen it. Dan Aykroyd and John Lithgow. What is it?
Yep.
Lay it on me.
I'm going to tell you it only if you promise as soon as this episode's over, you go and rent it, The Twilight Zone.
Oh, the Twilight Zone movie. I totally saw that. Of course I saw that. Oh, I do not remember that.
Yep.
I do not remember. That wasn't too cheesy. That was a pretty good movie. I mean, there were worse movies, but oh, well, fascinating. Well, very good, very good. So I hope people can get their scare on if they're into that sort of thing. I am looking forward to, I have to say this time of year, I must say I consider it quite an accomplishment that I've already completed my holiday weight gain. So I'm ahead of schedule.
And, you're only on the current season of weight gain? I've already put on 27 pounds.
And I'm hoping, current season. Well, I'm hoping that we usually have a pretty good Halloween here. This is one of those neighborhoods where people come from other neighborhoods. The Brooklyn Halloween parade is right the next street down from me. So,
cool.
So there's always, I love going out and seeing the little kids in their costumes and usually outside with some other neighbors handing out candy. I live in an apartment building, so they just come around to the stoops. But many, many years ago, when I first moved into this building back before the flood, we stepped out, it happened to be right at this time of year, and we stepped out for the first time, me and my college friend, who was my roommate at the time, started walking down the street, and here comes the Halloween parade for the grade school, little grade school. So all those tiny little kids in their, superhero costumes and skeleton costumes, whatever, were coming down. We thought it was adorable. And then he said, look, and from the other opposite direction, there was another school coming down this way. And he said, oh no, there's going to be a rumble. I never forgot that. I always think of that every time I see a school Halloween parade, of a rumble between a bunch of second graders in Halloween
And just
costumes.
like that, it turned into a Bruce Springsteen song. Well, guys, it is time to wrap this episode up. I do have one honorable mention just to sneak in at the very end. If you're a fan of the TV show 30 Rock with Tracy Morgan and what's her name, Liz Lemon, Tina Fey, there's a song called Werewolf Bar Mitzvah, Boys Becoming Men, Men Becoming Wolves. It's not a long song, but go look that up too. From all of us at Martins and More, thanks for listening.
Scare you later.
Ooh.